Welcome back to the 48 Men Podcast. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited for our guest today. His name is Chad Veach. If you don't know who Chad is, he is one of the biggest personalities that I've ever gotten to meet, but he's also a husband, father, pastor of Zoe Church in LA. He is an author, podcaster, and he's a newfound marathon runner. So Chad, welcome to the podcast.
You know, I got to admit, I've run one marathon. I'm one and done.
One and done.
One and done.
Well, when I was listing all the things you did, I almost ran out of room on my page because I was like, there's really nothing that he doesn't do.
Well, the only thing that I don't do well is leg day. I know we're talking about physical fitness. We'll get there. But I have been accused. One of my friends says in life there are the calves and the calve-nots. And I'm kind of in the calve-not category.
Well, here's the thing. But honestly, I do train legs a good bit, but I couldn't run a marathon. See, so there's always the thing that you got to, there's always a give and take.
That's right. That's right. I just you gotta rock what your mama gave you. And these are my legs. This is how I was born. I love basketball. I love pickleball. I love to run. I actually love to run. And not everybody was made for leg day.
Yeah. That's true. And also people, if people see you on social media, they also don't realize that you're like 6'5". So sometimes if you're skinny legs, it's because you got some height to you. So
Exactly. You know what's so funny is, in fact, I'll do it this afternoon, but my wife and I, we really love Orange Theory Fitness. We go together 4 or 5 times a week. She went 5 days in a row last week. I mean, we love to go to Orange Theory. And whenever they start working our legs, I can feel my legs message me, hey, are we really going to do this?
Well, something I want to ask you right off the bat. I know that sports are a big part of your family. And what did you play any sports growing up?
Yeah, you know, I grew up in a house where it's like my dad was like, you're going to play everything. When you're older, you can decide what you want to play. But when you're a kid, you know, it was soccer, it was baseball, it was golf, it was tennis, it was, you know, football, everything. And I'm grateful. You know, I'm glad that we grew up in a home where it was like that was, you know, the priority, so that later in life I could go, well, actually, out of all the sports, these are the ones I really want to get really, really good at.
Yeah. What do you continue to play them now? Like, because I know you play golf, pickleball.
Yeah, so I would do golf, pickleball, and Orange Theory. Now, I don't play basketball. I miss it like crazy. It's my first love. Like, I really fell in love with basketball as like a high schooler. But I've just seen so many guys my age with Achilles injuries and ACLs, and I just go, I love my life so much. I love my kids. I love my flow. I don't want to play basketball because I don't want to get injured.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of sticking right now.
Yeah.
If I play basketball, I play pig.
I love that. Well, something that even with basketball that gets overlooked, like a twisted ankle is one of the worst pains that you could ever have, and it's not worth it. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah. What did you grow up playing? What were your sports?
So growing up, I did basketball, football, baseball. We played tennis like on Thanksgiving break and those kind of things, but. Throughout high school, I just did baseball, and I thought I was going to want to pursue that, but just ended up getting burned out on it. So just went to college just for school. But now me and Willie, we are in a rec league basketball team together. He's the coach, the coach / starting 5 player. He's pretty. He makes all the sub calls and everything. We do. We have like a church league softball that we do over the summer, and then we play flag football every now and then. But growing up, it was really mainly baseball. But now baseball's kind of hard to. It's kind of the one sport that's hard to play. You know, post given that.
What's crazy about you saying you burnt out on baseball? That was me. You know, when I got to high school, actually, you know, because I played Little League and then played All-Stars every summer, and then in middle school I started playing Babe Ruth. And you're playing baseball 5-6 months a year, and it was your whole summer, you know, double headers, all that. And by the time I got to high school, I go, my buddies are going to the gym to play basketball. And in Seattle, we play baseball in the spring. You know, it starts, you know, like let's say March. Well, it rains still through June.
Yeah.
So I'm out in the cold, and I'm like, my buddies are inside playing basketball. I'm going to go do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we also, me and Sadie play tennis a lot. We love pickleball. We're not as nice as LA or the other LA here in Louisiana, but we don't have the luxury of pickleball courts. We have a few sporadic tennis ball courts that we like to play at. But yeah, pickleball is the up and coming sport that if you haven't played it, it's like ping pong mixed with tennis, but it's kind of, everyone can kind of really do it. Tennis is more, I don't know. I feel like if you're really good at tennis, you have a better shot of beating somebody who's not as good at tennis. But pickleball kind of evens out the athleticism.
Yes.
I feel like.
Well, what's crazy is, okay, so pickleball was invented in Washington, where I'm from.
Uh-huh.
So we had pickleball in PE. So
Really?
we a lot of my friends' houses, they had pickleball courts in their backyard. So I've been playing pickleball since, I was a kid. So the rest of the world is catching up.
Yeah.
But it's such a great game.
So you were playing pickleball before it got cool.
Like in the 90s. I was playing
Yeah.
pickleball in the 90s.
So you were playing pickleball. We were playing like wall ball.
Yes.
Just all these other
Tetherball.
all these other sports that we did not have the luxury to play at. Well, something that I love you do, you do these monthly challenges on your Instagram where it can be spiritual, it can be physical, and you do, you've done 10,000 steps in a day, you've done workout at least 5 days a week. Where do these, what does the motivation to do this come from? And I know that you've taken a little bit of a break from doing them, so why have you taken some time off of doing that?
Well, so my little brother, he's a pastor in Seattle, and last year he was saying, about this time last year, he was saying that he was doing that hard, is it called Hard 70? I think it's called Hard 70.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
That's
so
tough.
70 days, you have to drink X amount of water, you got to do 2 workouts a day, one inside, one outside, both for 45 minutes. You got to read, for a certain amount of time a day. And just the list of it, when he told me he was doing that, I go, what am I doing with my life? So I go, I'm not going to do that, but I need to have some variation that's challenging me. Yeah. So I just thought, if I'm going to do stuff, I think that leadership to me is going like, hey, I'm trying to challenge myself to do X, Y, and Z. I'm just throwing it out there if you'd like to also join. You don't have to, but if you want to.
Yeah.
And we just saw a big response. People going, wow, I'm in. Whether it was reading or walking or exercise or Bible reading or prayer, whatever it was. And so I got into a rhythm and I really liked it for myself.
Yeah.
It really was challenging me. And it also reminded me of that saying, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Yeah.
So it's like we all want to grow, but we got to shock our body.
Yeah.
We got to shock the system.
Yeah.
So I loved it, and we did it for, I think, 10 or 11 months. I have taken a break just so I can kind of get fresh ideas.
Yeah. Are you somebody that you like to set periodic goals for yourself to stay motivated? Is that kind of something that you're passionate about?
Totally. I just think I really believe in strong starts and strong endings.
Yeah.
So let's do this for 30 days, or let's do this for 21 days. Let's take a chunk of time and let's focus on this muscle, focus on this area, focus on this team, and let's try and get better. So my mind would work that way, and I really enjoy doing these challenges.
Yeah, and I think there's even something about being a man and having, I don't know, I feel like it's engraved in our framework, the idea of a challenge. I don't know, because even with the podcast, we do physical and we do spiritual challenges every week, and it's something to stay disciplined. I feel like as a guy, having discipline in your life, I feel like it's something that you can kind of always come back to. So I thought it was so cool that we do similar things with the challenges like that, because I feel like even, like I said, as a guy, challenging yourself to do a certain thing, it just, I don't know, I feel like it's just the way that we were wired.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, what does it say in Exodus? In Exodus, it says, the Lord is a warrior. A warrior is his name. So in Genesis, it says we've been created in the image of God. So I've been created to be a warrior.
Yeah. That's so true.
God made me to conquer.
That's so true.
So I've got to have mountains. I've got to have challenges. I've got to have stuff that feels daunting or impossible. And it's like all guys, we want to. What's the old cultural worldly saying is that guys want to win in the boardroom and the bedroom. Okay, I get what you're saying, but what God made us to do is conquer.
Yeah.
Guys, we're wired to ascend the mountain.
Yeah. Was when you first had the thought for the marathon, is that kind of the heartbeat of where that came from, having something that you could conquer and prove that to yourself?
Exactly. So what's so funny is, our friend Houston, he also ran the marathon. So my whole goal when I ran the marathon was I wanted to be under 4 hours. That was my goals, going like, if I'm going to be under 4 hours, I'll feel pretty good about it. So I start running, and I talked to a buddy. He said, number one piece of advice I'll give you during the marathon, don't stop. Like, if you don't stop, talk to people. Just, if you can, just focus and just keep going. So I get out the blocks, and I'm, on the Nike app that I got going in my headphones. Every mile I finish, the lady's updating me on my speed, and I'm in the 7s.
Yeah.
Mile 3 completed, average pace 7:50. Next one 7:50. Next one 7:53. So I'm in the 7s for the first 20 miles. That's awesome. And I'm thinking I'm gonna really have a good time. I hit mile 20 and my body started to really slow down. But because my body basically said, "Hey, you only trained us to get this far. We don't know what it feels like past this."
Yeah.
So anyways, I finished and my average pace was 8 minutes and 30 seconds. I finished in 3 hours and 40 minutes. To me, it was about getting my mindset in a place to do something I've never done, and to break barriers mentally of going like, let's challenge yourself to do something hard.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, you 3:40, you crush your goal time.
I did, and I felt good about the time. Now, I didn't post about it and tell everybody what I did, because we have another friend that ran it in 2 hours and 52 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And I go, I can't post my score next to yours. My God.
Well, you need to, because that's impressive. I mean, did you enjoy the training that went into that, or was that like?
Oh yeah, I loved it. I love the whole Again, I think it's like something about telling yourself I can do hard things.
Yeah.
Half the battle of doing hard things is showing up to do hard stuff.
Yeah.
And then once you're there, it's like, let's go. You got this. Self-talk.
Yeah. Were you in silence for 3 hours and 40 minutes, or were you listening to something, or did you just have the lady telling you every mile, or what was your strategy there?
So this is so funny. So, when I run, I usually listen to podcasts. I like to learn and, get some insight while I'm running. Well, the race was on a Sunday morning. So it starts at Dodger Stadium. And you get there like at 6 a.m. The sun hasn't even come up yet.
Yeah.
So I'm there. It's Sunday morning. The sun's not up yet. Well, what do I do every Sunday morning? I listen to worship music. It's the day of the Lord, and the sun is not. I'm feeding my spirit. So I never run to worship, but I'm like, I'm just going to start with worship. I ended up running to worship. I mean, I'm telling you, there were moments I was weeping, worshiping God on my run.
Yeah.
Like just thinking about the goodness of God. So I wasn't in silence. I had Brooke Fraser in my ear. I had, Elevation Worship, Hillsong. I had Maverick City. I was worshiping the whole time.
That's beautiful. Did you and Rich run? Was it the same day that y'all ran the marathon, or was it different dates?
No, Rich ran a half marathon.
Oh, he ran that was half marathon. That's
to clarify. As a hater.
That's my bad. It was a half marathon.
As a hater. The competitive edge just came out there. My brother Rich ran a half marathon.
That was it. That is my bad. Because I knew he ran, because I messaged him about it a few months ago. I completely forgot that it was the half marathon. So you technically you're twice as good as Rich.
These are your words, not mine.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Well, I don't even know if he listens to the podcast, so he might hear that, he might not. Who knows? Well, I talked about it earlier. When I was kind of introducing you, you are a pastor in LA at Zoe. Was being a pastor something that you always wanted to do, or did you have something kind of happen in your moment of life where you kind of felt that desire to want to pursue that?
Well, so I'm a pastor's kid, so I grew up in church, grew up around it. And I think from a young age, I could always kind of sense and feel like that was the direction the Lord was going to take my life. And, whenever the prophets would come into town or whenever I was at a summer camp, that was kind of what people would pray over me or, prophesy over me. And I just really didn't want to do it. And if I can be honest, I didn't want to do it, not because I didn't love God or love ministry. I just saw the sacrifice that my parents made.
Yeah.
And how much they served and loved people and the toll. And I just thought, I don't know if I'm built to serve like that. And so I was 16 years old and I went to Promise Keepers in Seattle, Washington, in the Kingdom, 65,000 men.
Crazy.
And I'll never forget, I was on the 300 level behind the stage. I can still remember where I was standing. And we were singing a hymn. And I just had a moment where I lifted my hands and I said, I'm all in. I'll serve you all my life, whatever you want. And I never looked back from that day.
Yeah.
I came back home to my high school, started a prayer meeting in the middle of my lunch. Middle of lunch, I'd eat for 15 minutes, and then me and my friends would go pray in a classroom for 15 minutes, and a revival broke out in my high school. So at 16, I was like, I'm in.
Yeah, that's so good. Do you think, because I feel like, there's obviously stories where things are instantaneous like that, but then there's also, gradual periods over time. But when you look at the New Testament, a lot of things that happen like that are pretty instantaneous. So do you feel like there's, when you finally have this revelation of like, this is who you are, this is who you're created to be, that there is this like fire that kind of gets instilled in you to where you want to go, start a Bible study, where you want to go start a prayer meeting. Like, do you think that most of the time there is that moment where there's like, I grew up in church, but here's where it actually became real to me?
Well, I think one of the greatest answers to that, when you ask that question, I think immediately of the parable of the sower.
Yeah.
And Jesus goes, listen, here's the reality. The seed goes out. The word goes out to all of us. Some of us catch it and boom, we spring up with joy.
Yeah.
And I think that, when the fire hits you, whew, there's nothing like being on fire for God.
Yeah.
But if you don't keep throwing logs on that fire,
yeah,
that the end result's pretty nasty.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's about how do you take that fire and keep feeding your love for God. So that's why we need scripture. We need worship music. We need to be in the house of God. We need to be around good community and like-minded brothers and sisters. If I don't throw the log on that fire, it'll grow cold. And that's what Jesus is saying there. Is, to me, what he's saying there at the end, he said, but the seed will go out on a good heart and produce a harvest of 30-fold, 60-fold, or some 100-fold. What he's basically saying, if you keep your heart right before God, you're going to continually grow.
Yeah. That's so cool that you said that, because that's actually one of my favorite stories to talk about, because before it ever truly fell on good soil for me, I was always the person that would go to these youth camps and these Christian camps, and I would be so on fire and I'd be so passionate. And then after a few weeks, I would have somebody say, you'll be back to doing that, in no time. And then but then over time I would fall back to the same thing I was doing before that. So I really was like, because it says immediately they receive it with joy, and then it says immediately they fall away, after trials and after persecution. So the moment somebody makes fun of you, or the moment you go through something tough, like, yes, you were on fire. Yes, you had that passion and that zeal, but there was no root to it. So I love that you talked about that, because it is like it's a discipline, and even after I don't know how old you are now, but you're older than you were when you were 16. So over time, there's always going to be logs that you have to keep putting on the fire.
I was just going to say, because the other part of that, the next description he gives, he says, or the cares of this world.
Yeah.
the deceitfulness of riches, the desire for other things. He just goes, whatever, fill in the blank for you, other things. They come in and choke the word.
Yeah.
So it just requires due diligence to keep your heart right before God.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of going back to the challenges. And I love that you're doing this podcast and you know, speaking into guys' lives, because man, we need all the help we can get. I don't know about all the guys listening right now, but I need all the help I can get.
Yeah.
To make sure my heart doesn't go sideways.
Yeah. And for somebody that's listening, is Parable of the Sower, is it Mark 4? I feel like Mark 4. That's what I thought. So for you personally, that was what I was about to ask you. What are some of those logs for you? Like, how do you diligently train yourself spiritually?
It's a great question. Well, like this morning I did what I've been doing since 1999. Every morning I get up, I read the same Bible reading plan I've been doing since I was, 19 years old. And I would miss a few days a year, maybe a few, because I just know how important that. In fact, this morning, one of my scriptures that I chose was so powerful. And I just sat there and looked at it and went, there it is. And I was reading this morning how God says, they asked for things, they lusted for things that they thought they wanted. So God gave them over to those things. It reminds me of Romans 1.
Romans 1, yeah.
And so I just thought when I saw that, be careful what you ask for. And then it said, when God gave them over to these lusts, the result was leanness in their soul. And I thought, oh, God, help me to have a big soul. Like a big soul to me is someone that carries empathy and generosity and love and life and hope. But you start getting into lust and sin and your soul gets lean. So To answer your question, I try and do my daily Bible reading. I try and start my day off with prayer. And I mentioned worship music is a big just habit. And the reason why, because I need to start my day reminding myself, this is who you really are. You're a servant. This is not about you today. God opened me up to whatever you want to speak. Give me divine appointments. So if I don't start my day off that way, I find I'm just not as sharp. I'm not as intentional. And so those are big disciplines, that I try to create my life as a young man and just stay with them.
Yeah. As a pastor, do you ever wrestle with the idea of reading for personal intimacy and then also like prepping for messages? Because I feel like that's something me and Sadie talk about a lot. Sometimes it's like you can get so consumed with when you read the Bible, looking for things that you can speak on counterintuitive to like just reading just to cultivate that intimacy.
I think thank God, because I learned this Bible reading practice in 1999 before I was a preacher, those two worlds have never collided.
That's awesome.
They're just completely separate. So this reading has always just been for me.
Yeah.
Studying for messages is in a whole different bucket. That's awesome. And so they're never in competition.
That's awesome. I love that. That's actually so good. Like, because that's so true. Like, you have to, differentiate the times where you're spending for yourself versus the times that you're spending, to pour out.
Well, because I think my Bible's right here. Let me just grab it real fast. I think this is a very dangerous. For the people listening to audio, I'm holding my Bible in my hand right now. If I go through this thing right here and all I'm looking to do is give away, I'll become a shell of a man. But if I read this thing and I'm looking to go here, I'll become who I'm supposed to be. And it's the old adage, who we're becoming is more important than what we're doing. And I just think if you only read the Bible for messages, you can give a message, but you're not going to live a life.
Yeah. That's so good. So what are ways, I'm just curious to know, what are ways that you've intentionally get poured into, whether it's through, like you said, podcasts, or through friends, or through mentors? Like, what are practices that you put into place where because like you said, you speak a lot, you pastor a church, you're constantly pouring out. What are ways that you get poured into?
That's a great question. The first immediate thought that came to mind was I try and go. Pastors are really funny creatures. They're hilarious to me. I'm one of them, and I've grown up around them my whole life. But the reality is that all of us, no matter what field or industry you work in, we're swimming in small ponds. And going on airplanes to go get around big leaders has been one of the things that saved my life. Of getting around a Craig Rochelle, getting around a Chris Hodges, getting around a Louis Giglio, getting around giants, getting around people that really I just marvel at their abilities, but who they are is greater. And so I think you got to make it a habit. If you're the smartest person in the room, then you got to get into a different room. Mm-hmm. You got to get into spaces where you're not a big deal. You got to get around people where it's like they don't know who you are.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a habit that's helped me it gives me perspective of going like, I'm not a big deal.
Yeah.
I've been around a big deal. That guy's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think that helps us get perspective. Insecurity. We have so many guys that deal with imposter syndrome. I think it's like 70% of adults in America deal with imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome means I'm not living the way that I profess to live, and I know it. And through my guilty conscience, I don't want to be around big people.
Yeah.
But when you're secure and confident and you don't struggle with insecurity or jealousy, you want to get around big leaders because you want to learn. And so I think that's a major discipline. Go get around people that just listening to them talk, go to the conference, go to the seminar, go to the retreat, go to whatever you got to go, to Passion or Hillsong Conference, these types of things, getting in those rooms shape me.
How do you think we get past the idea of because I feel like a lot of times those insecurities that we have, they're masked by pride. So do you think that's something like that we grow up with, or that's something that's instilled in us? Or how do you think we get past that hurdle of having the humility to not be the smartest person in the room, whether it's because we actually are insecure of smarter people, or whether it's out of pride because we don't want to not be the smartest person in the room?
Well, yeah, I think you already nailed it. Pride.
Yeah.
Pride is the thing that keeps us from growing. And the double-edged sword of it, because there's one side that's like, I know it all. And there's another side that says, I'm too insecure to ask a question or get into a bigger room.
Yeah.
So we all need to become comfortable in our own skin. We have to become just okay with, this is the way God made me. This is my Enneagram. These are my gifts. These are my talents. And because I know who I am, I can celebrate others. And because I know who I am, I can ask questions and I can try and learn. But if you don't get comfortable in your own skin, I don't think that a lot of people get to that next layer of fun, which is learning.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, I'm laughing because you're just so spot on with everything you're saying. This is just, I'm really enjoying this conversation. This is awesome.
Oh, yeah, I love talking to you. This is fun. This is and this is the audience. To me, it's
yeah,
we want to become. To me, what is my true desire? To become the best version of myself.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines right now is, all of us have been shaped by trauma, drama, daddy, and mama.
That's good.
So we got to work through some stuff.
Yeah.
We've got trauma.
So
We've got drama. You got dad stuff. You got mama stuff. Okay. What are you going to do about it? Let's get therapy or healing or Bible reading. Let's get, listen, a cocktail of decisions will get you into a mess, but a cocktail of great decisions will get you into health and strength. It's never one choice.
Yeah.
It's a combination of decisions that allows for explosive growth in your life.
Yeah. in your life personally, how do you feel like being healthy physically and being healthy spiritually have complemented each other simultaneously?
They're never disconnected.
Yeah.
They're just, one of the best books I ever read was a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. Peter Scazzaro. You got to read this book. And he talks about how the cognitive and the spiritual are always connected together. And if they're not, what we have are spiritual giants but emotional toddlers. Mm-hmm. And so the physical comes into play because how great is my spirituality if I don't have testosterone, if I don't have serotonin, if my adrenal glands are just totally shot. So physical fitness allows me to fire and be at my best, and that's when my spirituality is at its healthiest.
Yeah, that's cool.
So they're never disconnected. That's why the Bible literally teaches us, beloved, I pray your soul may prosper in all things. Well, what are the all things that God wants us to prosper in? Physically, spiritually, emotionally, and even financially. God never goes, I just want you to flourish spiritually.
Yeah.
He wants us to flourish in all areas.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so good. Well, something I want to ask you, because you do pastor in LA, which, the culture there is different than a lot of most places. So you are around celebrities a bunch and you're around that culture. What do you feel like is something that the church can kind of have this idea towards celebrities being in church and that idea, and how do you feel like it's different to disciple somebody who's, who is a celebrity versus somebody who is not a celebrity?
Well, I always think about Jesus, I mean, they just got so mad at him.
Yeah.
How could he sit with these sinners? And a lot of translations call them notorious sinners. So I always take that word notorious as famous sinners. Mm-hmm. See, there's one thing about some guy, that's in our church. He's a school teacher. Not everybody knows about his sin. But the thing about a celebrity is you mess up, everybody knows about your sin.
Yeah.
So I always think, Zacchaeus is a great example for me. He's up in that tree. Jesus is walking by. Boom. God knows his name. Says, get down from there. I'm going to your house today. Now, listen, the crowd was ticked off.
Yeah.
Because they knew Zacchaeus was a thug. He was a jerk. And so it always reminds me, Jesus loves people that not everybody else does.
Yeah.
And I can never let people determine who God wants to work in. And so I just am marvel at the fact that there are notorious sinners that want a shot at the gospel. There are people around the world that their interest, like Zacchaeus, is piqued at who is this Jesus guy. Mm-hmm. And so I have a commitment, like you and great leaders, to go, if someone is interested in the gospel, who am I to not let them see who Jesus is?
Yeah.
Not even Jesus prevented them
yeah.
from seeing Jesus.
Yeah. Do you think we've gotten better at all at welcoming that, or do you feel like we've digressed, or maybe we're at a standstill, or do you think we've had any? Because I feel like social media, it can go all these different ways. But where would you think that we're at with welcoming that?
Well, I think that's a great question. I want to say in some ways we've gotten better, and I think in another way, sadly, I can't say that we've grown. And I think that there's just there's an interesting threat there for people to go. I think where I would struggle in this category, if I'm being honest, is one of my favorite stories about Jesus is when he talks about the two guys that are at a prayer meeting. He says one of the guys can't even lift his head. He's like, I'm the worst. And the other guy's just looking around going like, thank God I'm not like you. And I think the thing that could really take out the church is self-righteousness.
Yeah.
And a thinking that who I am is better than them.
Yeah.
And my sin is not as bad as their sin.
Yeah.
As if.
Yeah.
As if. You know who I want to be? I want to be the guy that can barely lift his head and going, I don't have the answers. I'm not perfect. I'm grateful for God's grace, and I'm gonna make everything in my life about Jesus.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna get my eyes on people's sin. I'm not a judger of man. I'll leave that up to the good Lord.
Yeah.
But so I think for the church to continue on in growth, we need to get our eyes off of people and our eyes on God.
That's awesome. Because I'm pretty sure it was the centurion. It was the centurion, right, who said, "I believe it helped my unbelief." So there's this theme through Scripture of like it says a humble and contrite heart I will never despise. And if you look at the Scriptures, it was the Pharisees who Jesus had all the problem with. So it was the self-righteous. It was never the, obviously he said I came to call the sinners to repentance. So like there is this transformative act that he wants to have in people, but it was the self-righteous and the Pharisees who he couldn't stand.
Totally. And I think, to go back to Romans 1, why you're asking about celebrities. Why is it a hard time for people in the church to see celebrities serve God, worship God, learn about God? Is because I think Romans 1 talks about it. We worship humans. Our culture worships people. You've experienced it firsthand. You've seen it.
Yeah.
You've seen people think that these people are more important than other people. Well, we know that God's not a respecter of man.
Yeah.
God is not a respecter of man. So we have to see every person the same through the lens of the cross. Listen, there are no bad people or good people. Jesus was not sent from the Father to make bad people turn into good people. Mm-hmm. Jesus was sent by the Father to take dead people and make them alive.
Yeah.
And when we can see people either dead or alive, it's really easy to go, I'm on mission to help people that are dead become alive to God.
Yeah. What do you think that, like, because I love this idea, because there is, like, 2 Corinthians talks about, you're a new creation. Galatians 5 talks about acts of the sinful nature, fruits of the Spirit. So, like, what do you think is that, like, that main key formative part of, like, we were dead, now we're alive? Like, because I feel like there is this, like, process of sanctification over time. Like I said, some people it's more instantaneous, some people it's more gradual, but there is this moment of, like, I'm burying this old person, and now I'm gonna, it talks about in Galatians 5 again about, we will live a new life. So there is this old me, and now there's this new me, and that should change that should change everything about the way that I live.
Right. And I think that, there you go. You just nailed it. That's the word. The word is sanctification. And I think a lot of times what happens is that we're judging people on the sanctification process that they should be on. Well, let me ask you and are we sanctified to the level and degree that we want to be?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I'm trying to grow as fast as I can.
Yeah.
But I'm a work under progress.
Yeah.
And God works with us to the degree of our surrender. So we are all trying to get ourselves and everyone that we love to a place to surrender to God's will for our life. So I just love Paul. Paul's talking to Galatia. You mentioned Galatians. He's talking to the church in Galatia, and he's like, guys, I got to come back and I got to see you guys again. Because I'm hearing that you guys totally bought into a lie, and so I'm going to come back and work until Christ is formed in you.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. Because sanctification.
And I'm like, that's it.
Yeah. Well, because sanctification is so interesting because it's like the more over a period of time that you get sanctified, the more sinful that you realize that you actually are. So like, it's one of those crazy things where like even as you get better, you realize how far you actually are.
You get to the place like Paul.
Yeah.
Who says things like, the things I do not want to do, that's what I'm up to.
Yeah.
And the things I want to do, I never do them.
Yeah.
So how's that working out for you, Christian?
Yeah.
And to going back to the point of the original question about celebrity, I think we're frustrated with others, but really we're frustrated with ourselves.
100%.
And so we take the anger and the animosity of our own personal life and we judge others. And that to me is a sad reality. Where we should be encouraged and excited that so-and-so or whoever, your friend, your cousin, your aunt, your brother, your neighbor is interested in the gospel. Can we just get excited about that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think we're definitely, and I do think social media has played a part in that. I think that we can be increasingly hostile towards that and even just, have that self-righteous spirit, which is just, to me, that's the most concerning thing in the New Testament is thinking that, you're this way, but truly, there's all these things within you that is just backwards of the gospel.
Backwards.
Yeah, backwards. Well, I love how much we've talked about challenges today on the podcast, and typically how we end this podcast is we give a physical and a spiritual challenge. So I want to ask you to give a spiritual and a physical challenge for us to go out and do during the week.
Okay, so I saw that this is what you do, and I love that you invite challenges. So I've got two challenges, but in my spiritual, I've got two challenges within the challenge.
Love it.
So my first one in the spiritual is I want to challenge you to read the Bible every day for 30 days.
Okay.
Don't miss a day, 30 days. Also in the spiritual challenge is to get planted in the house of God. Because I think to the degree that you're planted is the degree that you'll grow.
That's good.
Because the Bible teaches us those that are planted in the house of the Lord will flourish.
Yeah.
It's hard to flourish until you get planted.
That's good.
So that's my spiritual challenge. Physical challenge, when I saw the opportunity to do this, I thought immediately of 12,000 steps.
Okay.
Because you and I talked about 10,000 earlier.
Yeah.
But I saw someone say the other day in LA that they walk 12,000 steps. And I go, I thought we were supposed to do 10 was hard, but 12, that's pretty good.
There you go.
So 12,000 steps.
Okay, there you go. And just question with the steps: how do you track the steps if you don't have some kind of smart watch or smart something?
Yeah,
I feel like you can just individually count all your steps. Just carry around a notepad all day. I'm at 500, 501, 502, 503.
You got to have the Apple Watch or something like that to count, of course.
Well, there you go. Well, if you don't have a smartwatch, just walk until you feel like you've maybe reached close to 12,000 steps. That's all I can say for you. Well, Chad, man, thank you so much. This has been just such a delight just getting to talk to you. And it gets super real. I mean, I feel like that's something that we don't do often enough is truly talk about things that are actually, I mean, I feel like we do talk about super deep things, but like going there, I feel like that's how you're actually going to grow is if you really talk about core issues that we feel like are going on. So thank you so much for going there with me today. This was an awesome conversation.
Man, really appreciate you having me on. Thanks so much for what you're doing.
Thank you, man.